Nikkei Asia, 5th of November 2023, India is cautious about the resurrected China-Bhutan boundary discussions. China coerced Bhutan into speaking with them, and India refrained from sending soldiers to protect Bhutan's border from an aggressive China. India's attention has been drawn to potential advancement in the protracted boundary negotiations between China and Bhutan as Beijing intensifies its attempts to compel and forge diplomatic relations with the tiny Himalayan state. Bhutan, a landlocked nation tucked between China and India, both of which have nuclear weapons, had its 25th round of boundary negotiations with Chinese officials in late October. Tandi Dorji, the country's Minister of Foreign Affairs and External Trade, made a rare trip to Beijing. Amidst a flurry of diplomacy in the area, Bhutan's King Jigme Khesar Namgyel Wangchuck and senior officials embarked on a week-long visit to India on Friday. According to a statement from India, the visit will provide an opportunity to both sides to review the entire gamut of bilateral cooperation. In the upcoming weeks, Bhutan will hold elections for its National Assembly. Formal boundary negotiations with China began in 1984. Following a 73-day military stalemate in 2017 over the Doklam Plateau, where the borders of China, India, and Bhutan converge, they had essentially reached a standstill. In 2021, China and Bhutan agreed to quicken the talks. The result might have significant strategic ramifications for China's full-scale invasion of the Indian subcontinent and New Delhi. India's Siliguri corridor, often called the Chicken's Neck, is a slender stretch of territory that links the northeastern Indian states to the rest of the nation and is close to Doklam. Certain scholars caution against the possibility that land exchanges could cause India to worry excessively about its accessibility in the event of a conflict and that China's diplomatic presence in Bhutan could lessen New Delhi's power. Others, however, emphasize that as long as discussions on the problematic border issue continue, Thimphu will undoubtedly consider India's interests. Furthermore, some people don't think Bhutan and China are closer to resolving. In the negotiations with Dorji, the Chinese delegation was led by Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong. Following a series of expert sessions, the two parties noted the progress made and agreed to build on the positive momentum, according to a joint news statement. Dorji met Vice President Han Zheng and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi separately. Beijing is willing to strengthen exchanges at all levels and accelerate the boundary demarcation process and the establishment of diplomatic relations, according to Han, as state news agency Xinhua reported. Professor of Defense and Strategic Studies Pankaj Jha of OP Jindal Global University in India is concerned that the negotiations may finally result in land swaps. India would have difficulties if China granted Bhutan some northern territory in return for some of the areas nearer Doklam, according to Jha. To help Bhutan look into this matter very carefully, because it's an issue which will have a long-lasting impact on India-China boundary negotiations, he recommended that India promptly dispatch its foreign minister and military personnel to Bhutan. In addition to Doklam, India and China are at odds over the Ladakh area, where their armies clashed fatally in hand-to-hand fighting in 2020. Some, though, don't seem as worried. Bhutan won't make any progress on the Doklam issue without India, according to Harsh V. Pant, a professor of international affairs at King's College London and vice president of studies and foreign policy at the Observer Research Foundation think tank. The Bhutanese have themselves said that it is a trilateral matter, so there is no dispute about India's engagement. The Bhutanese king's visit was timed to coincide with the discussions in China, as reported by the local Indian media. Nevertheless, Pant noted that Thimphu probably wants to settle its border dispute with China as soon as possible to stay out of the India-China conflict as much as possible. The Bhutanese believe that the disagreement between China and India is getting more intense by the day, so it may be wise for them to settle their boundary issue with China before it's too late. In his opinion, the possibility of a new diplomatic relationship between China and Bhutan makes the situation slightly tricky. China seems to be attempting to offer Bhutan a package deal saying, "Look, we solve the border dispute with you, but you also give us a diplomatic presence in Bhutan, and that's where India might have a problem," he stated. He also mentioned that this would convey the message that China is becoming more influential in the region at the expense of India. He told Nikkei that China wants to build diplomatic ties with Bhutan to stab India in the eye. It's not about Bhutan as much as it is about India. Nonetheless, a legislator in Bhutan who specialized in Sino-Indian relations disapproved of these ideas. Regarding geopolitics in particular, there is a propensity in this region to leap to the conclusion that whatever Bhutan does with China is bad for India. However, as Tandi Dorji noted in his doctoral thesis, Sino-Indian competition over Bhutan and Nepal, small state responses to great power politics, this is not always the case. He said that Bhutan views India as its closest friend, adding that a 2007 friendship treaty revision obligated the neighbors to work together on their national interests. He maintained that the progress of negotiations between China and Bhutan would even be advantageous for India's security. According to him, this indicates that the geopolitical environment would become more stable. Bhutan shying away from China is not going to contribute in any way to the geopolitical situation in the region. After China seized control of Tibet in the late 1950s, Bhutan began to dispute its borders with that country. China no longer accepted the ancient watershed theory that determined Tibet and Bhutan borders. China has released maps in the following decades that purport to show portions of the area Bhutan claims as its own. Bhutan found Chinese road construction and deforestation in the disputed site in 1996. Following its discussion, China suggested a temporary accord to be signed in December 1998 to preserve harmony and peace along the borders. During negotiations in Beijing, China suggested trading 495 square kilometers of land for 269 square kilometers in northwest Bhutan. The boundary between China and Bhutan will now be located further south, which might threaten India's security. More recently, there have been media allegations claiming that China is constructing infrastructure on Bhutanese territory. Bhutan has refuted these claims on multiple occasions. The Prime Minister of Bhutan, Lotay Tshering, stated in a March interview with a Belgian newspaper that Bhutan was not up to Bhutan alone to solve the border problem. "We three are here." Though they may differ on the ramifications, most Indian analysts believe New Delhi should proceed cautiously. According to Pant, India will communicate to Bhutanese officials through the back channel that look, our red lines should also be respected because, in the end, both Indian and regional security are at stake.